Good morning and welcome to the Babbles Travelling Yarns podcast. My name is Grace. I live in Ireland. I am an avid knitter, spinner, weaver and cat owner. He's just left. He's kind of done. That's fine. I am based in Limerick. I said that, and that's in Ireland. Hi, how are you guys doing? It is Monday, the 30th of July, I think. God, we're at the end of July. Crazy. We've had some lovely wet weather this week, and I say lovely because Ireland is normally wet, so we've had a very long dry spell, something like 6 weeks or 4 weeks without rain, and then a bit of rain, and then another 2 dry weeks. And it's actually killing the land and the farms and stuff, and people are like, oh Grace, stop being happy that it's raining. I'm like, I am happy that the animals can survive now and without being shipped in. Anyway, whatever. I'm really glad that it is a little bit more mild. This is the weather that I'm used to. I'm not used to the hot weather. I dislike it. Can't sleep at night. And there's no aircon in Ireland, so that's a bad thing when you're still expected to work and you're not on holidays. Anyway, I am on holidays this week, which is glorious. I am currently working in a hospital, and I've managed to get a week off in August to prepare for a show that I'm going to in Yarnfolk up in Belfast. Not Belfast, sorry, it's Whitehead in County Antrim. It's in Northern Ireland. So it's about a 5 to 6 hour drive away. I haven't done it yet. So I haven't driven yet. We're going to be driving up on Friday. Hi Beans. You want to say hi? Want to say hi again? Hi Beans. Look at that little face. Anyway, sorry Beans, carry on with your day. Yeah, so I have been busily preparing, not as crazily as I was for woolen. I think woolen kind of prepared me, like I was over worried and I didn't really know what to do, but it went really well, so I'm really not too worried. I still have quite a lot of stock from woolen, but I am re-dyeing as far as I can anyway a lot of the colorways that had sold out at woolen, and I'm also coming up with some new colorways for autumn. Some of them I'm really excited about, and I will do a blog post, or I will do a vlog about a shop update that's going to be going up after woolen, or after Yarnfolk, sorry. So Yarnfolk Festival of Wool is held in Whitehead. It's a little village just about 25 minutes on the train from Belfast, and it is held in a number of different sites around Whitehead, this little seaside village. I'm in the community centre with a lot of lovely people, even Eve Chambers Design Textiles. She's just right beside me, I think, and then Bear and Sheep's Clothing is going to be there as well. Bear and Sheep's Clothing have just done Fibre East. Fibre East looked like it was so much fun. Yeah, so this week it's going to be quite a simple podcast. It's going to be talking about one project that I'm knitting, and then a couple of things that I have been spinning. It is the end of Tour de Fleece. I think it was the end of Tour de Fleece yesterday. So technically I suppose I'm done with Tour de Fleece, but I am quite happy with what I did get done. So that was good. Yes, so I'll first start with what I'm wearing. This is my drift pattern by Kristen Finlay, who is also Skein Yarns, and this is a very long drift that I kind of turned into a bit of a dress tunic, and it looks really nice with leggings. I am knitted out of only 2 sock blanks, about 100 grams each, 400 meters each, from their naturally dyed sock blanks from Ninja Chickens. Maria, who is in North Carolina, I think. So it was amazing. I knit it on a size 5mm needle, so it is a very loose gauge, which I really wanted, because I wanted the sock blanks to go as far as possible. So I think a little belt would be cute with it, because it looks like I have no waist. So a little belt would be nice, I think. Cute, cute, cute. Yeah, so it's really light, it's really comfy, and I've been living in this and also my water lily, which is made of a bamboo fibre, from Morrison Sons, which is lovely to wear in the warm weather. Yeah, so I suppose the only thing I've been knitting on this week is my jumper for James. Hashtag jumper for James. So in case you have just joined me, I have had a lot of new followers. Thank you so much to the new subscribers. Thank you so much for stopping by and giving me a little chance. I had started at the start of the year, decided that I was finally going to knit a jumper for my, or jumper or sweater for my very tall boyfriend. Now my very tall boyfriend is 6'8". That is around 2 meters. I think he's 2 meters exactly tall, like very tall. He has a very long torso. It's very long. Yeah. Anyway, so I'd been putting off knitting something for him, and I had started knitting a Fair Isle jumper for him, a Fair Isle kind of waistcoat for him, but there was an issue with, I had to rip it out once because it was way too big, and then I had to rip it out again, and I still have to rip it out because I used the wrong needle size and it's in the naughty corner. So what did I do? I decided, hey, instead of tiny little Shetland fingering weight, or you know, it's effectively, it's a jumper weight, which is fingering weight essentially. It's so tiny, and it was taking forever because, you know, you're knitting like, and it's Fair Isle as well. It would be beautiful, and it will be beautiful if I ever get back to it. Not guaranteeing that, because life's too short. So I decided to cast on a jumper for James as part of an epic long cal that I'd started. That was going to last 6 months. So it's now the end of July. That was in January. So obviously that cal has been extended to a year. And there are so many incredible projects in the Epic Along thread on my Ravelry page, on my Ravelry group page, which you can find down below if I do my show notes. You can find the group by going on to Ravelry and searching Babbles Travelling Yarns podcast in the groups. You'll definitely find it there. So yeah, and I think the group, like the little avatar is my face going. So hey, I need to change the little avatar. I need to get a little avatar made for that small pictures. Oh, I need to do all that. Me, I'll get there. So yes, I started doing that, and then I gave up, and then the shame, and everyone was asking, hey, where's James's jumper? Oh, poor James, he's no jumper. And then of course James milked it, and I did ask you guys to do that, so thank you, because I started doing something else. So when I went down to Killarney, or County Kerry, on a little trip away, and you can see that vlog in one of my previous videos, I bought some Vanawillemiel's yarn. It is a 200-gram massive hank. I bought 6 of them. 200 grams Aran weight yarn. So there's about I think there's around 300 meters in a 200-gram ball. It's huge. So when I was there, I was looking at all of the different, they have a wall of scarves with all of the family names. So let me tell you a little bit of a story about the Aran sweater. So the Aran Sweater Market is where I bought the yarn from. It's Vanawillemiel's Aran Sweater Market. It's all kind of the same brand. It's just Irish wool. So there are 3 islands in Galway Bay, which is on the west coast of Ireland. And it's a very harsh environment. When the Ice Age had completely covered Europe, there was a big ice sheet that actually went straight across Ireland into the Atlantic Ocean. So it kind of was scraping all the earth off. And right at the edge, it removed pretty much all the earth. So all it was left with was limestone. So when all the ice melted during the warming period, all that was left was the limestone bedrock. And then the sea level rose and it created these little islands in Galway Bay, which are made of this limestone rock. So it's very harsh environment. The only real, if you're living out there, the only real industry they have out there is, now they have tourism, but back in the day when people didn't have money to travel to Ireland, they had fishing. So fishing in the Atlantic Ocean is incredibly dangerous. It is a huge body of water, and Ireland is the first thing that it hits, especially with the Gulf Stream. So all of the hurricanes and everything, they're just pushed up from the Caribbean straight into Ireland. So it's notorious for terrible weather, rain all the time, big storms, like the tail ends of all the hurricanes kind of are thrown at us. So out in the Aran Islands, fishing was an incredibly, and to be honest, everywhere in the world, fishing is an incredibly difficult and dangerous job. So the best thing well, the only animals that could really survive on the island were like rabbits and sheep, because sheep can survive on very, very poor land. They'll eat anything around the place, you know. So they I suppose from a long tradition of when the Vikings first brought over the sheep, and the Normans and everyone just brought over these animals, they would have spun the wool and then knit these kind of, I think the Celts were the first people to inhabit the Aran Islands. And if you've ever seen Celtic design, Celtic tradition, you'll see there's lots of these flowing interconnected lines, and I think it comes a lot from like plants and roots and the interconnectedness of life and symbiosis, and there's all this very traditional imagery that comes along with it. And the Aran sweater, apparently the Aran designs, the cable designs, and all of the different, there's like the tree of life designs, which are in a lot of handcrafts, such as quilting and a lot of other, and weaving and everything. So all of these designs have kind of been combined and turned into these kind of glorious cable jumpers that you probably know about. They're normally a plain undyed wool, and the only decoration is the cable. So there's lots of different variations as well. There's Guernseys and Jersey designs as well, which are like pearl and knit designs. It's not so much cables, it's more pearl and knit relief designs on the sweaters, and that's just the Guernsey style of the fisherman sweater. So before plastic was invented, about 50 to 60 years ago, and became widespread, there was no waterproofs. So waterproofing was, the best you could get was actually wool spun from the sheep directly without washing it and getting rid of the natural lanolin or the greases in the wool. So then when you would spin it, it would actually be greasy, and then when you knit it, the water, like from the rain and stuff, it would actually bead up on the outer part because it's effectively waterproof. But wool as well is also extremely insulating, so that it would be dry and warm on the inside, and then the water would bead off, and it was effectively the waterproof of the world, as far as I'm aware. The waterproof of Northern Europe anyway, definitely, where people were using sheep and sheep fleece for kind of keeping warm. Farther down south, like around the equator, they would have used more plant fibres like linen and cottons and things that grew around like the warmer areas, and then those would have, I don't know if knitting was essentially, but there was a lot more weaving that went on with the plant fibres, possibly because it's a lot easier on your fingers to weave like those vast fibres. So weaving was probably more natural. I mean, we did have weaving here in Ireland too, but knitting was a lot more portable, so you could run around after the kids, after the sheep, after the men, bring them their lunches and all that sort of jazz, obviously because it was normally women who did it, and it was more portable than bringing your loom around. So that could be part of it. There's a huge history in textiles, which I'm only scraping the top of my own research on it. So yes, it was an incredibly dangerous occupation, fishing. So a lot of the time it was very difficult to recognize bodies when they were washed up. So, and there still is a lot of superstition around fishing in the ocean because we don't really understand it. It's very difficult to predict what's going to happen out in the ocean. So a lot of the patterns, the cable patterns that were knit into these designs were actually forms of like protection, spiritual protection and blessing, and everything was imbued into it when their mothers or their wives were knitting these jumpers for their sons or husbands, that the only thing they could do really was wish good. And you know, I really think that these sort of like prayer shawls that people knit, you know, thinking about the person and wishing them well, you know, there's something to it maybe. I'm not sure, but it sounds nice. But also what they used to do was the families used to have specific designs on the Aran sweaters. So they used to have these, they were almost like dog tags for soldiers in war. So so for example, I don't know if these current modern designs are specifically the ones that they used to have, but on the Aran Sweater Market website, which you can find down below, you can actually look up your name and see what designs they would have used, and they normally come from the crest of your family. So for example, James's family crest is Doherty. So the Doherty crest has a big stag in the front. It's a big stag and it's kind of rearing up. So with the design on the website, there were 3 stags, kind of cable stags running down the center. And there was there was like diamonds, and I think diamonds meant something, I can't remember exactly. I think they were like memories of the fields, small little fields on the islands. And then there was cables, and moss stitch actually apparently comes from the moss that grows on the rocks, because it's a mainly rocky island. So the Irish moss stitch is actually reminiscent of that moss. I don't know. There's lots of theories and they can all be refuted. So anyway, it's just an example. So there were a few of those elements, but I bought the pattern from the website and I was like, I'm going to make this for James because it's Aran and it must be easier. And I've been wanting to knit a cable jumper ever since I started knitting. I have really wanted to knit a cable jumper, but I started off with the first jumper I ever made, putting cables around the raglans, which I loved, but I never really did it again. So I really wanted to do it. So I bought the pattern and I didn't really like it. It was very old-fashioned. There was like all of these instructions on all different pages that needed to be done at the same time. There was like the cables on one side written out, no charts, no, you know, it was all in pieces, jumper in pieces as well. And I'm just like, nah. So I decided that I would design my own because that's what the women used to do. They used to design their own sweaters. It was a family design that they used to decide, now, you know, that I have to do this. I find it really interesting as well that I'd say that the women who married into a family would suddenly have to change their knitting style to suit the man's family. So I'd say she did do some adjustments, you know, to include some of her family as well, and her family's kind of traditions and well wishes into that as well. And I love that idea of a family pattern. I love it so much. So if you'd like to join me, you can go onto the website and have a little look and see. So I decided, I looked through all of these books, the Nora Gaughan's Knitted Cable Source Book, and I have a few knitting dictionaries, stitch dictionaries, 750 knitting stitches, and there's so many here that I want to do. And then also the Japanese knitting Bible, which Jen gave me. Thank you so much, Jen. This is so useful. I use it all the time. So I had to look through all of those, and then I was doing loads of swatches, and then I was measuring James and everything, and I decided to cast on. And I have not stopped knitting this. I was using I'd written out my little chart and I was using it for the first couple of rows, but now I know exactly what I'm doing. It's so easy. So let me show you how far I've come. I am on the second ball. Let me show you the ball of yarn. Oh my God, it's so huge. This is the ball of yarn, and it was bigger. It's as big as my face. It's very big. Now the wool is quite rustic, as you'd imagine. It's Irish wool. Now I think it still has the spinning grease in it, which is fabulous. That's what I wanted. This yarn is not necessarily 100% Irish wool. Irish wool is very difficult to get unless you get it straight off the sheep, because a lot of the sheep farmers ship their wool abroad to scouring facilities out of Ireland, because we don't have one here, and then all the wool gets mixed in together, and then they buy it back off of the open market. So it is very difficult to get 100% Irish wool. If you do see that it is 100% Irish wool, grab it in seconds, because a lot of work has gone into that. But this is Aran Sweater Market, Kerry-Willemiel's yarn. It is sold down in Kerry as part of the Kerry-Willemiels, but it is milled up in Donegal, in Kilcar, Studio Donegal, I believe. Yeah, so this is one of the 6 balls of wool. This is my second ball. I only joined it a few rows ago, and this is the sweater. So there's a lot of moss stitch, which I'm beginning to regret. But I do think that it frames it nicely, and also the moss stitch is going to be under the arms and around the sides, so it's not super, it's not going to be super important. And when this stretches out, it's going to look a little bit more central. Now, I have no idea what I'm going to do when I get up to the arms. I think I may try some set-in sleeves, but I'm kind of worried about that as well. So it might just be a vest. I don't know if I'll do a set-in sleeves. So let me talk you through it. So I'm knitting this on a, good question Grace, 5mm needle, or a US size 8, handy to know. A US size 8 or 5mm needles. So I cast on like, I can't remember how many stitches. I wrote it down, so I have it all written down. I cast on loads of stitches, loads, and I used I think I used a 3.75mm needle to get the rib. I really wanted it quite tight to kind of copy one of the other sweaters that James has. So I did moss stitch across this side. Then there's a little purl stitch down here to make this other cable kind of pop a little bit. This is just a 3-stitch cable, just always going in one direction, like a twist. It's not a cable, I suppose it's a twist. Oh, I suppose that is a cable. So it's just like a twisted stitch cable. This is a 6-stitch cable. There's a purl in there, and then a 6-stitch cable which always twists away, and then this is another twisted stitch which just goes the other way. So it's a nice framing device. Then there's 2 purl stitches, and then this is my interpretation of staghorns. So if you can see, it kind of looks a bit like there's a row of stags. But I liked the design a little bit more than just 3 stags down the front, because with James's torso it would have to be like 5 stags. So I liked the continuous, and I think it's called the Sloping Diamonds. It's in this yellow book, orange book. And it kind of has a more modern look to it, which I quite like, because some of those patterns are very old-fashioned. And bobbles, I'm not a fan of bobbles, but moss stitch is quite nice, so I'm okay with that, but I'm not a fan of the bobble. So this is the stag motif, and then it's the exact same on the other side. So effectively I just had to design this part and just throw in extra stitches on here depending on how big he was. So it really wasn't too tricky. So that was that, and then it's the exact same on the other side, on the back. I decided to do the same on both sides, because I think if you're going to do a cable jumper, you could do the back flat, but no one can see it. You know, if they're in the back, you want them to see the 2 sides. So I'm knitting this in the round as opposed to in pieces, because nobody got time for pieces. I don't have time for pieces anyway. So on the edges, on the corners, I'm little teacup as to where I changed the ball, I think, or maybe it might have been a few stitches below, but anyway. So I have just done 2 purl stitches here. Now this is for maybe, although I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, but I have seen when you're worried about structure and you want a garment to last a very long time, what you can do is put a purl stitch in here, 2 purl stitches, and then use a mattress stitch to like pull those 2 together. And it just creates a fake seam, but also a bit more structure to your garment. So I was going to do that, and then I realized when I was knitting it, I was like, this is quite small. I don't know if it's going to fit James. So I tried it on him, and it does fit. It is a bit, it's fitted. It's a fitted jumper, which I'm a little bit disappointed in, but I'm not going to rip it out because, no, it fits him. He's fine. And it will block a little bit. And he says he likes it. He says he likes the fit. It's not uncomfortable. So yeah. And you know, if he does lose weight, I will be able to pull that in a little bit. He doesn't need to, but if he does lose a little bit, I can adjust it. The only thing is that I was thinking if it was really too small, I could steek it and then add, I could steek it right up the front actually and make a cardigan out of it if it's really too small. So there's always that. I could, yeah, actually that could be quite nice. I could just go straight up the front, put a zip in. That would still look totally fine. And it's really grippy, sticky wool. So when I'm like, and I've messed up the cables quite a lot, so I can drop down quite easily and fix them because the wool is quite sticky and it stays where it's supposed to stay. So yeah, so I was working on this all the time. It's basically the only knitted project I have. I've got a few pairs of socks that are ready to go for cinema knitting if we go to the cinema, but I'm going to keep them there because I'm just enjoying working on this when I'm at home, and I don't know, I'm not really feeling sock knitting when there's, you know, when I'm at home, because I'm not thinking too much. So if I'm thinking about this, then that helps me with my brain. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I have, because I kind of designed the pattern, I know it. It really helps when you can read your knitting. I have really learned how to read my cables on this one, which is so nice. Basically every time I'm always doing something on the, you know, there's the wrong side row, but obviously when you're knitting in the round there is no wrong side row, there is just the second row. So the first one you knit is the bit that you do everything on, and then the second one you do nothing. So I'm able to tell what row I am on now, because there's only 2 rows really, like there's the do nothing row and the do something row. And then so this one here, you can see that when I come up, okay, we'll start at the bottom, it's a bit easier to see. So when you start, you've got loads of purl stitches there, and you've got 1 row here, and then the second row you start doing something. You start moving these cables out and you leave these these knit stitches here, and then you come to, then you knit a row and you do nothing, and then you do the same thing again. You move it 1 stitch at a time. 1 stitch at a time makes a really slow sloping cable. So then when you go up to here, then you stop increasing out here and you start increasing from the center one again. So it's really quite nice that you're always doing something on this row. Now this cable here, it's actually got a long, more of a long cable. It's more sloped. I quite like it. So you've got 3 rows in there where you're not doing anything. You're actually just purling the center just to give it a deeper effect. Just give it a nice kind of 3D effect. So there's 3 purl rows in here. So there's only one time when you just you purl, I think it's purl 1, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 1, and you do that 3 times. But you can see when that is there because you can count. You're like, I've already done 1 purl row, okay, I'll do a second one, and then a third one, and then yeah. And you're doing 4 of these every round. So if you realize that you've done something wrong in the first one or the second one, you can, I can go back on the next row and just drop down and just fix it. It's not too tricky for me because I've done a lot of it now. So if I was just doing this in a single, I'd be finished the back now, but you know, I'm getting there. So yeah, I don't know really. And you know what? It could fit me if it doesn't fit him. So I'm not exact. So this is my waist, the hips there. But James's, I've got another 12 inches to go on this before I get up to his armpits. And low armpits, because I don't want really tight sleeves. He doesn't really like tight sleeves. So I'm not sure whether I'm going to do a drop shoulder thing. I think drop shoulder on, I don't know, it kind of looks, I've never done one, because to me it just looks a little bit schlumpy. And if this is already fitted, I don't know if that'll really be nice with the aesthetic. So I might just separate and do, you know, I bring it up to there and then separate it and decrease in and do some set-in sleeve business. But I'm not sure how to do it. I've never done it before, and I don't know if I can do it as part of, you know, I don't know if I can do it. Now what the first jumper I ever knit was for a little baby, and it was bottom up, and then I knit the sleeves and then did raglan decreases, and I could do that. That's quite traditional too. But I'm just not sure how that center cable is going to work. So it's going to come up to about here, and then probably I'll do a collar. That it might be, I need to measure him and see if that, because if actually that is the width of his neck, then that might suit actually. It might suit just coming straight up and joining in right at the same angle as the raglan. That might be a good idea. And then I'll just do a roll crew neck. Yeah, probably. He likes the shawl collar, but I don't know. I don't think I will do that. Poor old James. He gets no real say. So, yeah, raglan probably is some, and then I could actually add in those cables that I did for my first ever sweater, and I could add them in coming underneath the arms, which I think would look quite nice, and break up this big massive moss stitch. Although the cables themselves will break it up anyway. I don't know if I want to go simple or a little bit. I think this is quite a simple Aran sweater. I could have put something else right here, but I kind of, I didn't want, I wanted to be a little bit cautious because I felt like I was being brave enough, don't you think? And I wanted to give my brain a little bit of space as well, just if I'm doing lots of moss stitch. Now I'm not too worried about splitting to do back and forth the front and the back separately if I was going to do the set-in sleeves. But because I mean it doesn't really, there's a lot of purling in this, but it's purling and knitting and you know what's going to happen, you know what I mean? So it's not too words, you know, there's a lot of purling in this, so even if I was to split it, I'd be doing the same amount of purling, so it really doesn't matter if I'm doing it one way or not the other, because it's all pearls and knits anyway. So yeah, that's James's jumper for James. It's getting on quite well. I think I can actually safely get the whole body out of 2.5 of those massive hanks, which I overestimated my yardage, but I think it's a really good idea, to be honest, because it's better overestimate than underestimate and run out. Don't you think? I'm just worried about dye lots, but you can't see. You can't see anything yet anyway. No, it doesn't matter. I really can't see anything. So that's jumper for James, and I love that I can like fold it now. Oh, so nice. Oh, it's lovely. I love cables. I love the way they look. I've been watching The Knitted Monk recently, and he had this in his first couple of episodes, he talks about how cabling is just moving knits and pearls around, and you're like, oh yeah. So it was really nice to, I'm really enjoying listening to him. He's quite enjoyable. So that's great. And he also talks a lot about sustainability and stuff. So that's handy, handy dandy. So this is being kept in my Emerald Fibres bag, but it's actually getting quite full now. So I'm gonna have to move it, I think, to another bag soon. But I love it. This is Emerald Fibres Kira. She's going to be in Yarn Folk as well. She's the person that convinced me to go to Yarn Folk in the first place. Thanks, Kira. And I love it. She makes these gorgeous hand embroidered, super strong canvas bags. And this handle is the best, the most comfortable. It's like this cotton, there's no, you know, sometimes leather has that edge which like cuts into you a little bit. I don't really like leather anyway, but this cotton, strong cotton, is fantastic. And it's just at the right angle. I don't know how she got it, but it's just at the right angle to just hang there. Oh, it's so nice. And of course the drawstring, well broken in now, Kira. So it's the end of Tour de Fleece. So the next projects I'm going to show you are my Tour de Fleece projects. So I dyed up a colorway for Tour de Fleece, and then of course I had to keep some for myself. And it is based on the Irish Guild of Weavers, Spinners and Dyers logo, which are my favorite colors: greens, yellows and blues. I think the yellow just like makes everything kind of pop a little bit, but I kind of have realized now that I dye yarn as well, that yellow just brings such life to everything. I do tend to use it a lot. I do love it though. I love it. So I've managed to get 2 skeins of by Polworth base in the Irish Guild of Weavers, Spinners and Dyers colorway. So these are my skeins. And I don't know why this one turned out brighter than this one. I'm not sure why. Because these were actually 2 braids that were plied opposite. So I spun 2 braids and then plied them together to get these 2 skeins. And obviously I can only fit 100 grams on the bobbin. Well, 100 grams-ish. So these are my 2 skeins. I think I've washed both of them. But this one is just more tightly twisted. So hopefully I am going to do 1 more of these and see if I can get a jumper out of it. Oh, it's so exciting! That would be lovely. It's just such a beautiful color, if I do say so myself. But it's so interesting when I actually wanted to blend the colors, so I created rolags out of this, or faux lags, and then that blended up the colors significantly, so that then I got this kind of more, there are some parts which are more barber poled, but I think this is quite a blendable colorway anyway. I think that all the colors just kind of fade together, which I quite love. So these this is the Guild of Weavers, Spinners and Dyers colorway in the Polworth. I think this is the last one, and it's mine. Sorry, there might be some more in the shop actually. Now that I think about it, I think there is Corradale and Merino still in the shop. So if you want. Now the Corradale took the dye a little bit differently. It took a little bit more yellow, but I think the Merino is quite blue. But the shop is closed at the moment because I'm going to Yarn Folk, so I needed to take it offline just to see what I had and do some inventory yesterday, which took me the whole day. Ugh. Anyway, figured out I needed to dye some more blue because I don't have enough blue in my stock, which is good to know. So I bought these beautiful rolags, I'm obsessed with rolags, from Spindles and Stitches. Now Spindles and Stitches, Etsy.com. She makes these gorgeous, gorgeous rolags, and she does like themes. I think she had Beauty and the Beast themes one, because my friend Siobhan bought the Cogsworth ones, which is so cute. So this is Spindles and Stitches, and I bought her, if I want exposure, I'll get my tits out, and maybe my bits if it's not too cold. So it was 23 micron merino, 100 grams, and this is the back of her card. It's beautiful. So as well as the rolags, she also sent this beautiful little tiny rolag, and this is the superfine merino, corn fibre and Shetland and Corradale in sunflowers. I'm thinking I need to get a blending board because these are so pretty. So let me show you what I came up with. So I did a big story actually in my Instagram stories about this. You might not have caught it. I was trying to save it into a highlights. I should have done that, but I didn't know how, and I couldn't go back and do it. I don't know what the story was with that, but I decided to do a cable ply. So the Rolags were so beautiful. So the If I Want Exposure I'll Get My Tits Out colorway has purple, orange, and then yellow. Beautiful colors. So this is what came out of it. So you may notice that there's some black in there. Black was not in the Rolags. So each of the Rolags, I spun them up, singles, all onto one bobbin. It was 100 grams onto one Ashford bobbin. Then I put it up on Instagram. I was like, oh, I don't know. I think I want to try a cable ply, because to be honest, these are not my colors. They're kind of, it's very pink and purple. They were so much fun to spin, but I don't know if I would wear it. Look at this, pink. Just too much pink. So I was like, I'm going to do some experimenting with this beautiful thing. So what I wanted to do was try, for the first time ever, cable plying. Now, I first read about cable plying in a book that was given to me to review by Alana Wilcox, Spinny Buns, on Instagram, and she is a lovely lady. She wrote a book called A New Spin on Colour, and it's all about spinning and organising your own colour. And that was the first time that I was introduced to cable plying. Now, cable plying is basically when you get two bobbins. This is one of the bobbins that I'm going to add on to. Two bobbins, and then you spin up 25% of your final skein onto each bobbin. So you've got 50%. Then you've got another two bobbins. Let's pretend these are another two bobbins because I only have a couple. And you spin up the rest. So 25% on each of your 4 bobbins. And then what you do is you spin two bobbins together. You ply two bobbins together in anti-clockwise. So you would have spun your wool clockwise, and then it will go anti-clockwise. I think I'm going the wrong way because this is going to flip around, whatever. So you spin all of your 4 bobbins clockwise. Then you ply 2 of them together anti-clockwise. Then you spin those 2 that you finally get clockwise again, so that everything is locked into place. And you end up with this. I don't know if this is going to focus. I think I'm going to turn it around so you can see. It's a colorway that has blended a lot of the colors together, but they're also quite distinct as well. So if you see, it kind of looks a bit like chain link, a little bit. If you can see that. It's just such an interesting way to spin. Also, this is an incredibly strong yarn. So this is actually going to be an amazing warp. I might do a warp on weaving. So as you saw there, I think it will be a very strong yarn. It feels strong, you know, because I did put extra twist into the anti-clockwise so that when I went back, to be honest, I should have read the book. It feels fine. I think I might have had to, I think I should have put extra twist into my singles instead. I can't remember. Anyway, it worked. Whatever it did, it worked. And it is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. But I think I might put it into a warp and mix it with something else. I don't know what. Maybe some more black. Yes. Oh yeah. So I had put it on Instagram asking Alana, or Spinny Buns, what should I do? What's the best thing to do with cable ply? Does she think it's a good idea? And she said yes, but maybe throw in some black yarn into there just to, you know, spice it up a little. But I was like, yes. So I had some merino, black merino, from this piece, this scarf that I actually cut up to put into my kimono jacket, which you may remember, my woven kimono jacket. But I still had a lot of this merino, black merino, kind of lying around, and I still have a lot of it unspun. Oh God, don't talk about it. So what I did was I spun that up as one of the singles. So I had 3 of the if I want exposure I'll get my tits out colorway, and then 1 black. So I supplied 1 black with the color and then 2 colors together, and then I spun them together and I came up with this, which just gives such depth and contrast. I think it just works so well. I mean, if I was to put a white color with that, it would be a completely different skein. It would turn it more baby pink, I think, and more of a pastel-y colors, which I don't think would have been a good idea for my personal preferences. So that was so interesting. I really recommend that book. She did give it to me for free, but I do love it. And I only read it once, but you know, it was written so well and so clearly, and the pictures that she had in there were so well demonstrated that I really didn't need to go back and try and remember it, because I knew how to do it. So that is a talent. If you can explain to someone and it sticks, that is a talent of teaching. So thank you so much, Alana. It's fabulous. So yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've also finished a bobbin of Romney. This is some of my white Romney that I had been spinning for demonstration purposes. I'd been brushing out locks and spinning them. Actually, the lock spinning is much better than my bat spinning. This was a bat that I had made, and this was the locks that I spun out, that I brushed out and spun as locks. So guess which one I like better. I still have quite a lot of this white Romney in some bats, which actually look a bit grey. Like this, but I kind of stopped because it was, I think once I wash it, I think it's going to be fine. But I carded it using a carder from a friend of mine who has alpaca, but also I think the carding cloth that was on it was very grey, and I wonder, is it just new and it still has quite a lot of that grey, I don't know, dust or fluff or something that turned the wool a bit grey. But I have no shortage of Romney, so I'm not worried about this. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. This fleece was swinted in my backyard. Now, swinting means you toss your fleece in a bucket of rainwater. Ideally, I used it from the tap because it wasn't raining. This was last year. And you put the lid on it and you leave it for like a couple of weeks. I actually had gone into, I actually had surgery the day after, or the next day after I'd actually tossed it in. So it kind of stayed there for 4 weeks, but I took it out and I rinsed it off and it was perfect. It was a lot cleaner. There was a lot, that not all of the lanolin had gone, but it felt a lot cleaner and it was brighter. It was very, very light colour, because it was very poopy when it went in. But I've used that water now, that swint water, on my tomato plants, and my tomatoes are coming on great. So that was great. Yeah, so my next spin now, I am actually working on Romney that I got at the same time, but I haven't cleaned it in the swint, which means that I'm getting a lot of dirt out of it. So you can see that's a yellow cloth there, but you see that dirt? So it's not super dirty, it really isn't. That's actually 4 or 5 locks that have come out. But this is the lock. I think it's a Romney's Vortpals cross. Now Vortpals has black, very black fibre, black wool. So this grey and the sunburnt tips, which I love. Frosted tips, anyone? So what I'm doing is I am getting my little flicker and I'm putting my cloth across around my lap. I'll just show you what I'm doing. So I have my lock here. It's a lovely long lock. You can see the little bit of crimp in there. So this is a Romney's Vortpals cross. So I'm holding it nice and tight from the cut end, and I'm just going to flick out these tips. Just making sure I have it over the... Now, that's that. Just making sure I have it over the cloth so it doesn't spill onto the ground. And then I turn it around in my hand, so I've got nice fluffy flocks there, and I turn it around in my hand and I just go for the cut end. You can see the cut end is a lot blunter. And I got this from Ashford of New Zealand, this little flicker. It wasn't very expensive at all. Best tool ever, actually. I flick my locks before they go into the carder as well. Just makes it a little bit easier. It's probably extra work, but just reduces down the neps and stuff. So I just give it a nice little fluff. Now the trickiest part is trying to get the middle out, but you can just pull it, tease it apart yourself. So that is your lock. Now fully flicked and ready to spin. So now you can see some of the locks that have already been spun on here. It actually turns like a chocolatey, like a light brown colour instead of a grey, which is really quite interesting. So I'm just going to do a little bit of spinning now. So I'm spinning it clockwise. I have it on a bigger ratio here, not the small one down here. The small one will make the bobbin spin faster, which will pull on a lot quicker. I do have it on a low ratio back here, if you can see. There's two, it's like the gears on a bike. This is a large one, which will make it go smaller. Oh, this was a incident that happened at a demonstration. Myself, nobody else did it. I was just unscrewing the whirl and it came off. It's annoying. But I have it on a small whirl here just to increase the twist a little bit. I don't know, I think I quite like a well twisted. What is happening here? Wait a minute. There you go. So I'm just feeding it in there now. So it's spinning up so fine, and this happens when you've got a fine wool. And especially if you're lock spinning. I don't know if you can see this well. I'll just push it away a little bit. Maybe I'll turn it this way so you can see. So I've got my lock here in my hands, and I'm just going to join it at about 90 degrees. And I like to kind of have a little bit of fluffiness here at the bottom, just allows for take up there. So I'm just going to attach it there, and it's pulling in. I'll just pull back slightly and bring it down to join. And then you are just controlling your twist there. I think I'm going to concentrate and try do a proper worsted. This is as worsted as I can get without using combs, but if you see in between my hands, I'm not letting any twist in, and that's the main difference between worsted and woolen. If I let twist in like that, it's a lot airier and fluffier. I mean, it's a very fine difference. You can't really see, but yeah, if I can, I think that's what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and be consistent with this spin because I'm individually flicking the locks. I kind of have to take my time. So if you can see, I'm just working my way across the fan of fibers and just allowing the take up to kind of pull through my fingers. I am holding in my hand quite tightly, but also feeling the slip and letting it slip through. I'm not gripping it too tight. Death grip, sweaty death grip. That's your enemy with spinning. It's all about balance. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this actually. I love the way the colours are coming through. I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but it's really super fine. So if I'm going to make anything, like what I could do is do like a hat or something. I think that would be amazing. I have about 6 or 7 quantities of yarn for hats and jumpers and things, but yeah, so now I'm just moving across the fan. I'm just pushing the fiber into the twist there. Do you know, I'm kind of just putting it in the way, shoving it into the road. If you can see there. Now, so that is how I'm spinning my Romney. This is technically how you would spin merino and really a lot of other fine wools. You'd spin from the lock, and sometimes people spin like this, like you actually have an angle, and that actually makes it way too fine. Sorry, I don't want it that fine, but you can spin it Oh no, it's gone, I think. Yeah, way too fine. Anyway, so I've just been kind of learning a lot from the 51 yarns thing. There was a week with fine wool, and I have actually just bought the entire back issue, all the series of Ply magazine, which is so great. But yeah, so what you can do is, this is from in the corner as well, drafting in the corner, but I think it's just more organized to just use my fingers like that. That's how I feel more comfortable, and that's fine too. So then that's I think what I'm going to be doing next. But I have got a huge bucket of it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's gigantor. It's essentially half a fleece. I hope you liked that little tutorial. That's just spinning from the lock, which is what I've mainly been doing when I'm doing demonstrations for the Guild. I don't have many more demonstrations booked. I have a really fun event that I'm going to on the 19th of August in Craiganoan. We got together last year in the castle, and we all sat around and we spun, and it was so good. It was really, really enjoyable. People from all over Ireland came down, and it was just really nice to spin in a medieval castle. Like, that's so cool. And we did that because it was raining outside, because we were going to do it in the fort. But if the weather's nice this year, we might be able to do it in the ring fort, which is really interesting because they've got the old buildings built exactly how they were. And we've also, like, they've got fires, and they teach you how to cook traditionally in medieval Viking way. And it's so cool. So, yes. So that's what I've been up to. There's a lot going on. This week I'm hoping to go out, actually today, after I've cleaned the house and set my blue yarn to dye. I'm going to pop out to my mother's house, my mother and father's house, and try and see if I can, I'm going to bring some gloves out and see if I can start to harvest some nettles. So I need to bring some string, and I need to find somewhere like a bath to put all of the nettles, because I think I'm going to water ret it instead of dew ret it, because I don't really have a couple of weeks, but I have a couple of days. So yeah, that's my plan. I was going to go up to a weaving course this week, but it was just too close to Yarn Folk, and I've kind of been doing a lot this summer. And I'm kind of realizing more that I need to not do so much and don't expect myself to do so much, because I'm missing things, you know. I'm getting tired instead of enjoying my life, and I'm, you know, young enough to that's a little bit ridiculous. So yeah, so I'm going to try and do a little bit less, although I have really enjoyed all the demonstrating. There's a lot going on. We're hoping to try and get maybe some people to go to demonstrate with the Agri-Aware people for the Tullamore show. The Tullamore show is the biggest one-day event in Ireland, and it would be great exposure for the Guild, but I'm not able to do it, and I feel bad asking other people to do it if I can't. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so we're looking for someone to do that. We'll just be sitting there spinning and talking to people about the Guild and spinning, and you can also bring your loom that you want to weave. Yeah, so we are looking for someone to take part in that, and hopefully that'll go really well. Yeah, so I hope to see you at Yarn Folk. It's not gonna sound, it's gonna be so great. I'm staying with Derek and Bernie from Bear and Sheep's Clothing. I'm so excited. That's probably the thing I'm most excited about. And yeah, no, it's gonna be great. I'm gonna hopefully go to a linen museum on the way up, Lismore. God, I can't remember the name of it. And I also really want to go, I should really book, but I really want to go on a Game of Thrones tour on Sunday or Monday. Sunday maybe. I really want to go on a Game of Thrones tour. Really. And I want to go to the Titanic Museum as well. There's so much to do in Belfast. So annoying. But the Linen Museum sounds really interesting. We will hopefully do that on the way home. So on Monday, because James is working on Tuesday, because it's the bank holiday on Monday. I've got Tuesday off as well, so I could just leave him. Just go myself. No, can't do that. That's mean. But yeah, James will be there at Yarn Folk, and I've been trying to educate him on wool and what you need for wool and what the difference is between the different types of wool. And he's getting there. I mean, I realized that I had to actually do this when at Woolen he tried to sell a poor lady at like 8 skeins of fingering weight yarn to make a jumper. I was like, whoa, no. Like trying to teach him the difference between DK and fingering weight, and then worsted and Aran, like very complicated stuff. And to be honest, I found it complicated too when I started, and at least I was knitting with it. James is just bystander and he just freaks out, which I think he quite enjoys, the little bit of complaining when I come back, being like, I thought you'd never come back, you were gone forever. I was like, I went to the toilet. So yeah, so you can either be super nice to him and say nothing, you know, like ask him easy questions or just say hi, or you can be really mean and ask him the most difficult questions to freak him out. Oh, there's one more thing I want to talk about. Over the weekend, the Sockmatician put up something about how he suddenly realised that there was a lot of white faces on his feed, not very diverse knitters. So he started this hashtag called Diversknitty, and he said, you know, any person of colour, or, you know, someone different to my own background, if you want to say hi, we can start a conversation, and I'd love to follow you and see what you're doing, because there is this unconscious thing I think that everybody does, that they like people who are doing the same, not doing the same things, but look the same as them. And it's a community thing. It's like, you know, it's totally unconscious, I think, completely unconscious. And I think that it's a natural response to see someone who's like you and see what they're doing, because it might suit you. You know what I mean? Also, it's where you're from and where you're raised and all that sort of thing. So I absolutely loved following all the... I was a total creep. I went over to his post and I just went through everyone that was commenting, saying like, oh, I'm from here, I'm from there, I do this, I do that. And I was watching, so I loved it. I loved it. So I've just gotten into so many interesting conversations with people that I never even met before, and I'm so glad I did. There was a few people that are designers that I really, really, really want to make some of their stuff. So I got chatting with this lady, she was posting, oh yeah, so from just his posts with people responding, then people started taking the Diversknitty podcast and actually putting up bios of themselves. So pictures of themselves or people of what they knit, and then like a big list of interesting stuff about them. So there was one lady, Sylvia, with Cherries on Top 2 is her Instagram name, and she was saying that she mainly knits from her own designs. She's been knitting for like a long time, and she mainly knits from her own designs, but she's too scared to put them up on Ravelry. She's like too scared to publish them, and I'm exactly the same. Like, I'm like, I don't know how, I'm scared, but I don't know how because I've never done it. It's the same as everything. It's always a bit scary and confusing and magic when you don't know how, you haven't sat down and tried. So I know that when I sit down and try to write up this pattern, it's going to be okay. So anyway, what we've decided to do, Sylvia and I, are on September the 1st, when summer kind of all calms down, we are going to start designing our sweaters, and we're going to post our swatches. Yay! So this is the sweater I'm going to try and design. So I'm going to try to, because this was the first, well, I suppose not really. The first one was an adaptation on the flax pattern. It was just adding some cables. And I don't really feel comfortable using those numbers because it's Tin Can Knits numbers. They're not my numbers. So this one was designed during a sweater spotter class where we actually took all of our measurements and we had a look at our swatch. We knit a swatch and we took our measurements, our gauge off of that, and then we literally, this was designed top down by me. I mean, with help from Animals, the sweater spotter, but mainly me. And this is how you wear it. So I must do a model pose. You have to look a little bit constipated. So, like, this is finally going to happen. So Sylvia, I'm scared. I'm a little bit scared. But at the same time, wouldn't this be nice? No neck. Hanging off your ears. Anyway, I'm sorry. I haven't had breakfast yet. That's probably it. Low blood sugar. So that's what I'm going to try and have and get going. And I'm not very good at deadlines, but if I get into the groove of something, I will do it. So if I've just not sat down and done it, which is the reason why I haven't done it. So it's really nice to get to kind of find someone who's in the same boat, who, you know, I mean, it was her recommendation to try and do it together. I was like, yes, please. And that's what the community is all about. It's just so supportive and so wonderful. And I'm so glad that this Diversknitty hashtag has actually put me in contact with her. You know, she's so sweet. So, and it really started off a lot of conversations about belonging and tradition and expectations and stereotyping that was so helpful. So I personally didn't put up a bio because I'm a white girl. Like, I'm well represented. There is so much representation of me. Too much representation of me. So I don't need to put up a bio, and anyway, people can watch the podcast if they want to find out who I am, because I'm not a secret keeper. And so but I did feel kind of uncomfortable because I actually really wanted to. Like, I really wanted to jump on that bandwagon and do a bio about how I'm Irish and how I'm different and blah, 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 blah. And so I put a story on Instagram talking about how I did feel uncomfortable, but how this hashtag was actually really important for people who weren't widely represented to get out there and get their faces and get their stories told and heard. And I just felt that actually I needed to say, so I technically was putting myself in that story, but also I kind of just needed to say that I don't need to be in every story. I don't need to be in every hashtag. I don't need to be involved in every space. There are certain spaces where maybe I shouldn't be there, and that's fine. Not that, like, exclusion is a bad thing, but it's just creating safe spaces for people to talk about things. And sometimes maybe just observing and listening is important rather than jumping in with my opinion. I think listening is probably the most important thing, and that's what I've really enjoyed about all of these Diversknitty bios, because I've just loved hearing about them and their stories, and then engaging them about their history and their stories, as opposed to just, isn't it great that there's, oh my gosh, you never see a black person knitting, or, you know, that sort of thing, which a lot of people have been saying that they get a lot. They get that experience a lot. They get told that. And my friend Mars had a really interesting story that she put out, that she said that, so Mars is from the Hey Brownberry podcast, and she said that sometimes in her bio, she says that sometimes she struggles with feelings of inauthenticity in her knitting, because of this integral feeling that, you know, she is a woman who was born in a warm country and now she lives in a warm country, and, you know, she doesn't need to knit because she lives in a warm country, but she loves it. And she also felt a little bit like that her history, her background and her ethnicity kind of, it wasn't related to the deep-seated traditional woolly history of Ireland or Norway or Iceland or these cold places where you needed wool to survive. So her history wasn't steeped in that authentic kind of traditional way of using wool and knitting. So her tradition would have been more possibly weaving, maybe, you know, something like that. So that was a really interesting conversation to have with her, because then I talked about how I was knitting my Aran sweater, and it was possibly the most Irish, stereotypical Irish thing I could do, knitting my boyfriend a sweater. In case you haven't noticed, James is not a fisherman. And we are not living in the days where there is no waterproofs. There is also no one in my family that knits. Nobody in my family knits. Not one. Like, in Ireland, knitting was actually seen to be, you couldn't afford to buy clothes, so you had to make your own. It was a poverty thing. So nowadays, of course, that's changed right around with fast fashion. So they dropped knitting as fast as they could, to be honest, because it was cheaper to just buy your clothes instead. And also it came with the rise in wages and accommodation and that sort, and living standards rose. So they dropped knitting to the wayside. Everybody used to knit, and it is a big thing in our country. But the problem is that it is really inauthentic in Ireland, because there's no scouring facilities in Ireland. All of our wool is sent abroad to come back to us. It's not really the real Irish because it's all mixed up with everything else. Sent to China. A lot of the stuff in this Aran sweater market is merino. Merino doesn't grow in Ireland. It's too wet. It's too, like, the grass, the ground is too soft for them. Merino sheep need to be treated really badly. They actually, they get foot rot way faster than other animals. It's just not a great environment for them. They're built for warm, dry countries, like you get merino in the Falkland Islands. There's no real merino in England. They're in the Falkland Islands down in Argentina. And, you know, they're in Australia. So, like, you know, South Australia. So Ireland, like, that's interesting as well, because we have the history. But then there's this kind of inauthenticness, because none of the sweaters are handmade anymore that they used to be. Like 30 years ago, I still get people coming up to me saying my grandmother used to hand knit sweaters for sale to America, but that doesn't happen anymore. It's totally inauthentic, which is really interesting, right? Because we have this history about it, but actually not really. It's not really true. Whereas Mars is so interested in the handwork, in the mesmerizing quality of it, in, you know, the actual physical making of it. So she's way more authentic than our entire wool industry. So it really raised up some super interesting conversations about where people belong. And for me, I think that you belong anywhere you want, anywhere that you feel comfortable, anywhere you're interested in. You can, you know, if you're really interested in learning, in opening your mind to different traditions, in gaining skills. By gaining skills, you learn so much about yourself and the culture that skill came from. You're really widening your education so much. And you become a better person for it, because the more you learn, the more tolerant you are, And even if you just learn continental instead of English, like there's so many, in learning those ways, you learn all about these kind of different places that do things completely differently. Like Barbara's podcast, Knitting I Love podcast, she talks a lot about how she learned completely differently to everybody else, and her story is really interesting. But you learn so much about people. Like she was really impatient and she just wanted to do it, and then she figured out that she wanted to knit backwards because purling was slow, so it's just faster. You know, it's just really interesting. That's why I just love these fibre arts. There's so much to learn about everything, and that's where I exist. I exist in that learning space, and I hope that you enjoy it, because I sure do. So I'm going to leave it there. That was a big chat about it all. But if you are interested, have a look at the Diversknitty hashtag and start following some of those people, because they're incredible. And yeah, get into some conversations with people you normally wouldn't, because you will never regret it. Unless they're mean. Don't do that. But they're knitters, so they can't be mean. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's a sunny day, which means I might get some drying done. So I desperately need to turn on some music and get dyeing. Get busy dyeing. Get busy living and get busy dyeing.